Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Beyond Sunday, where we desire to take the conversation deeper and beyond Sunday. And I'm here with Shay. Shay, how you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Hey, check out this video before we dive into our conversation. All right. In this one, we are in this series of guided journey and trusting the leader. We're sort of on the tail end. Well, we've gone past halfway of the Lent season and on our way towards Resurrection Sunday, Easter. And so in this week, what was our big idea?
Yeah, so we're talking about joy and God making a way for joy as we're learning, all right, like trusting the guide. He's a God of joy.
Yeah. And the text we were in, the Psalm specifically, Psalm 126.
Yeah.
And these are the ascent Psalms, ones that were meant to be sung or said as people are walking up towards Jerusalem, towards the
out of exile.
Yeah, out of exile, but also ongoing towards the temple on feast and festival, holidays. High holy days. They're coming from the outskirts, from around, and these are typically from Psalm 120 to 134. These are typically the ones that are sung or said as they go up towards the temple.
Right. Yeah, and then also in Isaiah 43 was kind of the other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which for us is where we ended there, or not necessarily ended there, but we started with Psalm 126 and this calling out, being reminded of who God is and who we are because of Him, what God has provided, what God has done, and I think for me, even in that Psalm 126. Is this going out and sowing with tears, but coming back, singing songs of joy and carrying the harvest with them, right? So there's from out of sorrow, coming back in with joy and abundance. Is kind of what that psalm was speaking to me about. There's a difference coming out and sowing seeds in sorrow, and what's coming back is joy, and the harvest is full, and fullness that's there.
Yeah. This one for me, I feel like I've been on a journey with this psalm in the last couple of weeks because I don't know if you remember, but when we had our teaching teams together a couple of weeks ago, we prayed through the Psalms, so prophetic practice, and I was the last one in the circle to go, and this is the psalm that we landed on when it was my turn, and the second verse is what kind of pinged or stuck out for me. That says, we were filled with laughter and we sang for joy, and the other nations said what amazing things the Lord has done for them. And in the room, in that space for me, we had our leaders and these people who've been on this journey with us separately together in this space, and there's just a lot of joy in the room and a lot of laughing from the get-go. And so this stuck out for me because this idea of like, first of all, God filling us with laughter, like that idea, like it just comes from within and it's from Him. But also to be so filled with laughter and joy, or to look different enough that the people around us say like, what amazing things the Lord has done for them. And so actually I have a sticky note in my Bible, because one of the things we did out of that was to like kind of write that out. I can see yours in your Bible too. And for me, it was like God was saying, to be more specific. So like, what if Next Step in Centralia were filled with laughter and joy, and the communities around us of Fairwood and Centralia were like, wow, what amazing things the Lord has done for these people. And so when this pops up in the lectionary, then I was like, oh man, And so I thought I was like headed there, and we did go there. But then this psalm also this week for me was there's something about the first half of it and the second half that feels like the tone is different. I know you say don't hear tone, but feels like the tone is different. And we talked about it this
I
morning.
say it, but you don't want to listen.
No, because your tone isn't saying that.
It's like, just don't hear tone. It's just the words.
That's untrue. Tone exists for a reason, and it's helpful to communicate feeling. And that is part of what we talked about today, because like how a song in movies, right, conveys feeling, like something scary is going to be happening, or this is sad or whatever. And so that idea of like, if you read this psalm, what's the tone, what's the feeling? And the first half is very upbeat and joyful. But that second half can be more of a pleading or a crying out of like, God, restore what once was. And yes, there will be a harvest with shouts of joy, but right now there's a planting with tears of sorrow. And that resonated for me this week, because it feels like this psalm is holding two things in tension.
Well, that's actually what I thought even today, like, or actually right now, like we're recording this again. We get to sit next to each other and record. And this doesn't happen often. Typically we're on Zoom, and you're recording it from your church and I'm recording it from my church. And here we are sitting next to each other recording this again. And even that sense of coming out of this week of the hard or the tears of sorrow, and coming or anticipating going into, or there being a harvest, then and songs of joy to be had and experienced that God has prepared. So for me, even just in this moment of going back into Psalm 126, I'm thinking, well, that just sounds, it's all of that resonates to this last week, and anticipation for this coming week, where our families get to vacation together, play together, rest, hang out, depending on the weather. Maybe we're building Legos and playing games, or outside exploring and fishing, whatever. But some of the the anticipation of what God has prepared. And I think even like you say, maybe there's like a calling out at the end of this psalm of restore what was lost, or restore what was broken, restore what we, like, even the beginning, like this dream.
It's like a dream.
This is like those who dream, then our mouths were filled with laughter and our tongue with joyful shouts or shouting. So it's there's a sense, even like in real time,
right,
that able to see this maybe even played out in our lives.
Yeah. And you in prayer this morning, you said something about joy being a healing balm, and that resonates in this too, this idea of like in a wasteland or in a desert, or even as they at a certain point in the story, as they're coming back into Jerusalem, there is an amount of celebrating, but also they're walking into a desolate land where things have been destroyed. And there is some level of like, even in spaces where there's hard and there's hurt and there's pain, joy can be really healing. And there's something about that. And I think, and that's the direction for me that this went this week, was like, okay, so joy in the wilderness, but joy doesn't come, it doesn't come from easy or from a lack of hard things. It comes from a closeness to God. If God is joy, I just have this sense of God, like this picture of him, like you just get a little bit closer, the closer you get, the more of this joy you get to have. And yeah, it's the presence of God. And Moses calls that out, right, in Exodus 33, like, God, your presence is what marks us as your people. And so that was for me kind of the like, I want to be I want the way that I show up, the joy that I show up with, to be the thing people look at and go, something's different here.
Well, certainly, and it is a testimony to the presence of God. Right. So if people will know God by our love, right, then they'll also know God in by our joy,
or how close we are to God.
Well, sure, joy. The connection,
it's a mark of his presence,
and the presence of God by our joy. If even the statement here in this psalm is that the nations are saying, God has done great things for these people.
Right.
And the response here of the people is, God has done great things for
Right.
us.
Well, yes, he has.
Yeah, right. It's like
Yeah.
almost a, yes, you're right.
Right.
And I don't know if I read surprise in that, but I think just a blanket or a plain, yes, God
Yeah.
has done great things for us. A recognition, a calling out that, yeah, and the joy that's from within is a testimony to
Yeah.
that presence of God.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that hit me today was like, um, what that joy looks like may not be what we've painted joy to be. Because I also think, like a marker that's going to separate, like if we look at the world and we think like, okay, how are we looking different? Joy is something different that does set us apart, but only if we're also willing to offer up an honest, like, hey, here's the wilderness I'm in and I still have joy. Because I can blanket that or like I don't know, sugarcoat it, like, well, yeah, I've got joy and everything's good, and but we're not talking about a joy of like a I don't know, distraction or I'm just not going to pay attention to the hard things in life or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, no, actually, I want you to know that I'm in this and this is hard. And this thing is not great. And still I have joy.
Still have a joy, yeah. Well, and to the picture that came to mind as I was uh even just preaching was the picture I gave in our prayer practice from earlier in the week. And like the scripture God was leading me to was when Jesus goes up on the mountain. They've just done an incredible feeding of many thousands of people. The disciples go on a boat and they go to the other side of the lake. Well, they're on the boat and Jesus isn't with them, and storm comes, and Jesus then comes to them, not on a boat but walking on the water.
Yeah.
It's, Peter's interaction with Jesus in this moment. But the picture that I had in that time earlier in the week was that like laying down in that boat, the disciples or me laying down in that boat and looking up. I don't see the storm.
Right.
I don't see the horizon. I don't see anything else that's below the eye line, right?
Right.
I can only just see where my eyes are focused or my eyes are pointed. And there was a sense for me of that, the trust that exists in that space, that that even there, in my eyes focused on him, yeah, there might be lots of things swirling around us, swirling around me, but if my eyes are fixed on him, then I have an opportunity to be filled,
Yeah.
as or to focus on his presence, to be filled with his presence, to recognize that he's very near and close, but also that the things around me aren't overwhelming me or consuming me. And then we know in the story, right, Peter looks at the storm around and begins to sink, and Jesus reaches out and grabs him, and there's all kinds of truths in that story, but the picture in that piece was this, like, yeah, they're laying in the boat and looking up, our eyes are fixed on him. The things of this world, the struggles, the sorrows, the hardships might they'll be going around, right?
It's how we choose to posture ourselves.
Yeah, again, right back to positioning ourselves, posturing ourselves, like, and even laying in a boat out on a lake or a ocean, a sea, a river, like it's not a great, that's not a great position, but it's, especially if you want to know where you're going and how you're getting there and all that stuff.
But if you're trusting the guide.
But if you're trusting the guide, it's that laying down. Even brought me back to Jesus asleep in the boat another time with the disciples, asleep in the boat, the storm rages, the disciples are terrified, and they go find Jesus sleeping. And that's when Jesus this is early on in his interactions with the disciples, and he goes out and he's calms the storm. Or be still, and the storm calms down, and they're like terrified and amazed. But this other thing of like unbothered by what's swirling around. I wonder even if that's in the way we posture ourselves, if we are unbothered by the chaos that swirls, not that we're unaware of it,
right,
but we're unbothered because of the presence and the closeness of God. But then how I walk into those kinds of chaotic situations, it's not that I'm unaware of them, but I'm just unbothered by and I'm not overwhelmed
Yeah.
by it, because it's like, no, God is very much
Yeah.
present here
Yeah.
and aware and offering me what needs in that moment, or what I need in that moment, whether it is to come in and help guide, or be a comforting presence.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good.
And I think too, it also maybe even speaks to Isaiah 43,
Mhm.
of the what is God about? What is he doing? And do you know it? Do you perceive it?
Mhm.
Do you see that God's making way? I mean, even those what Isaiah is putting there in Isaiah 43 is like, these are things that shouldn't be streams in
Right.
the wasteland,
Right.
right? Things growing up in places it shouldn't, so the desert and wilderness. It's like, no, God's making a way which otherwise would be impossible.
Yeah. Well, and I also got this picture with that, like when this word comes from Isaiah, um, they're still in exile.
Yeah.
And I wonder, like, I don't know, I guess this is some guessing on my part, but I'm just thinking, like, how's this land for the Israelites, right? So there's this, on the one sense, there's some hope, right? There's this promise of like, I'm about to do something new. It's like that I've already begun it. This thing is happening. And yeah, there's this promise of like streams in the wilderness and this restoration. And there's a lot of language actually that ties into Psalm 126, right? So there's
And
some
even to the
themes
Exodus
there.
story, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and there's this tie-in of that. But I also wonder, like for me, if I'm in their shoes in that moment, I wonder if there's not a part of me that's like, cool, but when, right?
Yeah.
Because I can look at scripture and I can know, like, I believe God for new things, and I believe that God is going to show up, and I believe, like, I can believe all of that. But if I'm honest, in certain seasons, when it feels like exile or wilderness or whatever that is, there is a part of me that's like, God, I trust you for new things, but it'd be awesome if that could, like,
Sure.
right
Sure.
now. And I think that for me was like okay, so then in that, because the truth of the matter is God said that, and it wasn't immediate.
Mhm.
And even as they're like coming out of exile and they're walking back in, right, they have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of rebuilding. There's a lot of desolation. And yet maybe the joy isn't like, hey, once the work is done, once you're through the season, once you're whatever, which is so often, I think, what we tend to, not only like we think that, but it's like, I'll be joyful when, or I can't wait until. And I wonder if some of that isn't like, actually, this is part of the work, and it's in your joy, right? Nehemiah, like, the joy of the Lord is my strength. And that was the other image I was getting, even just this morning as I was preaching, was like, this is like our superpower. It's like this thing that God offers is like, hey, so if you get close to me, then I'm going to give you this power of joy. And in the places in the wilderness and in exile where you feel too weak, this is going to strengthen you. And it's this joy that gives you strength. And as I was like thinking through that, I was like, that actually feels so doable.
Well, because it doesn't come from us.
Well, it doesn't come from us, but also joy feels light.
Yeah.
So what if things are hard? And that was one of the questions I asked, like, what if I just smiled a little bit more?
Yeah. Well, also, I don't have to create it. I don't have to, it's not a good result on a test that happens.
Right.
It's not finally getting to the end. It's not manufactured in any way. It's not like as the world would love to try to recreate this and has never been able to say, oh, it's the next place you live. It's the next item you purchase. It's this
the next relationship you find, whatever. Yeah,
it's always trying to replicate this kind of joy, and it has never in the course of human history been able to replicate the joy that God offers us in his presence.
Yeah. And that's the, like, we said this morning, like, we living like we've forgotten that the gospel is good news. And that was like, I had a conversation with Andy, our worship leader, on Tuesday, as he's like, okay, unpack this week for me. What are we talking about? And that was the first thing he was like, he goes, we know the gospel, like we know the truth of what Jesus did for us. He goes, wow, how can we not be joyful? And I was reminded of a couple of years ago, we were at a like pastor conference thing, right? And there's all these tables with all these people who know Jesus and love Jesus and follow Jesus. And our table is rowdy and laughing and whatever. Typical. But I was so struck in that moment because all the other tables, there was just this like, it just felt like there was a sullenness almost, and just a quietness. And not that joy is always rowdy, but there's like, I don't know, in a room full of people that know Jesus, that know what it is to be close to him. Um, I don't know, there's room and there's a need for lament and there's a need for grief, but shouldn't we also be markedly different in the joy? And I think,
And even in the heart, and maybe
yeah,
especially,
maybe especially in the heart.
and then it's not manufactured or fake,
No,
but it's a like out of a recognition and a like posturing or position ourselves like God is the one
yeah,
who brings this to
yeah,
us. God is the one that even in the heart, even in the negative uh you know result of a test or like dealing with cancer, even in spaces like that, we show up,
yeah,
and the joy that we exude, it testifies in the
yeah,
presence of God. Things
yeah,
things in life may not be where we would love them to be
yeah,
on this side of heaven,
right,
and yet that's still how we can show up because of Christ,
yeah,
because of the presence of God in us and around.
right. That makes me think. Today I had a conversation with a gentleman who just lost his wife. His wife just passed away, and he was reminiscing about kind of their story, but his story in that, and literally in tears as he's talking about, I mean, he misses his wife, right? He's a week in. Um, but he's also smiling as tears are coming down his face because he's saying to me, I'm looking back at my life and I'm realizing I never realized before now that God was with me in every step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And he's starting back when he was like 16.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, and that just that contrast of like his face is lit up as he's talking about like God was there in every, and I mean, he was walking me through every detail. Um, and he's like, God was with me in every one of those spaces, and his face is lighting up, and at the same time, tears are streaming down his face.
Yeah. It isn't that, I mean, tension may not be the right word, but it is the both and.
Mm-hmm.
It is the sorrow of things in this world are not as they should be. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And yet we know that God is in the midst of it, in the midst
Right.
of us and in these spaces. So it's, now and not yet, what is here, and what we know to be true about God's kingdom that's breaking in moments that are He's calling our attention to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and maybe some of that too, and maybe this for me, this week was a reminder of, like checking where I'm depending on my joy to come from. Because when hard things hit, there's this, I told you earlier, but there's this sense for me this week of like, as the week is progressing on, like just kind of, there were a few things that were like, oh, that's another hit. That's another hit. But I wonder too, there's also this image of like, God, like, it's okay when you're beat up, I'm going to hold you. And when I'm close, then I do get to experience that joy. And there's something in that reminder of like, just come close, child.
Mm-hmm.
And if your joy is shaken when the hits are coming, then maybe your joy was coming from the wrong place, or you just need to refocus. You need to get closer. So there's something even like, as we're talking about trusting the guide, there's something even in that that's a reminder of where he's like, just come close, come close.
Yes, in the same way that He's even coming close to us, right? In that,
He's right there.
in these moments, yeah. Like, and that, and for me, I go back to just the way I'm facing. Which way am I facing? Back to even Henry's sermon with the mirror and the light shining on that. Which way am I facing? And part of that was reflecting that light, reflecting God's glory, but it's also in receiving that. It's like it's been there all along, and I just maybe have been shifted a bit, or looking at something else to provide that. And that was the piece for me, was the even coming from Isaiah 43, was do we get stuck remembering what used to be and wishing we could return to that time or that place or that moment. I find myself in spaces where it's like hard, or difficult, a challenge, a trial, or there's some long suffering going on,
Right.
this persevering, that I think back to the time before whatever
Mhm.
triggered, whatever started off, whatever
Right.
wherever the dam broke.
Right. Like,
And
remember when?
yeah, I'm like, remember that was not flooding in.
Remember when I didn't have this weight and stress and worry and
uh,
gray hair?
yeah,
So
thanks.
time ago.
Yeah, right here.
Oh, I wasn't gonna say that. You have a hat on. They don't know.
It's okay. um but that in thinking about that, of having my eyes focused on that,
Mhm.
then it isn't on, like,
You're
do
not
you not
perceiving a new
perceive a
thing.
new
Yeah.
thing? Do you not
Yeah.
see what I'm doing
Yeah.
here?
Right.
Because even like, no, I believe no moment wasted, no thing wasted in the economy of God.
Mhm.
So even in those spaces where it is maybe harder, yeah, like the visual, the dam broke and it's just rushing in, and you're like, oh my gosh, I I can't hold this back.
Yeah, you're getting knocked over because the
Yeah,
water's so.
yeah, that it's like, if you not see him, there's even in that
Mhm.
space that may be hard or feel overwhelming or rushing over us, that's like, do you know, I'm doing a new thing here.
Mhm.
And this isn't wasted. I mean, to desire this hurt or this trial, maybe not, I don't know. But God isn't distant in those
Mhm.
spaces. In fact, he's
Mhm.
even maybe closer. Maybe we're more like attuned to, Lord, help me, like
Right.
rescue me.
Literally in my weakness.
And that's to be reminded, yeah, of like, God doing a work even in those hard spaces.
Yeah. 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 And there's something, I guess, and I go back to, we kind of touched on this, but that idea of like, um, I don't know, he says the joy, it says the joy of the Lord is my strength, not the like obedience to the Lord, not the, not even the trust in the Lord, which shows up frequently, but
Mhm.
this time it's like enjoy. And right, it's Nehemiah saying that, and his calling was hard. What he was called to do and the opposition that he faced. And in that like, okay, I'm gonna need some strength here. And where I'm gonna find that is in the joy. That just feels, and so that was even some of the like, when a hard thing is coming, what if I just remembered like what Jesus did on the cross and chose to smile? That feels so attainable. Like, okay, this really sucks and the dam is broken and life is really hard. Can I make myself smile? And how does that change? Can I make myself celebrate?
Or
Can I
even
call out?
singing that Psalm 126. I mean,
Yeah,
isn't even that,
right.
there's a sense of like joy and glee
Yeah.
and yay,
Or,
and then
or
but also like remembering this
this
was
is hard and we're still in the hard. We're still planting in tears.
yeah.
But also the like, I mean, that's the other thing is like you said earlier, it's like in that moment, it's like, God, fill me with your laughter.
Mhm.
And that was the other thing. I saw a reel this week and they were saying that like an ancient church father said, the Holy Spirit turns to joy whatever he touches, and how often we are expecting an encounter or an experience with the Spirit to feel very I don't know, emotional or I don't know, like there's this like piety kind of
Sure,
like, right?
somber, right?
Yeah, like overwhelming. And certainly I have experienced that. Um, but also like in those moments, I wonder if it's like, if I could just have a little levity,
Yeah,
like, can I just have like a little bit of levity in this moment? And not false,
yeah,
not distracted, right? I'm not talking about like, we're just going to watch Netflix and forget our problems.
right.
But like, if I invite the Holy Spirit in and there's just where he's like, just a little joy right there.
Yeah,
Just to get you, a little further.
right. To offer a little bit of strength in the place of
Yeah.
weakness, or a place of um where I mean, I don't, for me it's like where I sense I'm feeble,
Mhm.
not just weak,
Yeah.
but feeble.
Yeah.
I can't take another step
Yeah.
without holding onto a rail, or yeah, not thinking I'm going to pass out or fall over. Just the feebleness,
Mhm.
like, Lord, your strength there,
Yeah.
joy.
Yeah. And that's where I sense he's like, just come here.
Yeah.
If you actually come closer, then if God is joy and God is love,
Mhm.
then when I get closer, that's the posturing and that's what's reflected,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Through
So then
the,
my feebleness actually doesn't, no, it doesn't even perceive
right.
what is perceived is a testimony of the presence of God
Yeah.
near me, in me, and that comes out in joy, and not
Yeah.
not a fake or false
Right.
kind of way, but an authentic, like the spirit. There's an encounter with the
Yeah.
Spirit of God,
Yeah.
and I cannot help but be joyful
Right.
because of who He is and who I am because of Him.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, there's a calling there in that way, that, and it looks different than the world. It looks different than many people around, even in really difficult situations. It looks different to show up, and like I said in the beginning, like I'm not unaware of the things going on in the world,
Yeah.
but I'm not consumed by them.
Yeah.
I'm not overwhelmed by them. And even when it looks dire, when it looks like we all should be panicking, running around for the exits, no, the joy of the Lord, we actually can be joyful
Mm-hmm.
here because of God.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the other thing I read this week said, joy isn't something we force or fake, it's something we notice. And for me, that was like that reminder of like, joy is there. Joy, again, if God is joy, and I believe that God's presence is like, I can step in anytime. I have access to the presence of God. So joy is there. It's just like, am I choosing to notice it? And that was some of the questions, the reflection kind of questions for me, for us this week was like, where is God already doing something? And it might be small. It might be like that one little green bud, like poking up, right? But like, where's God already doing something that that I need to call out, or where's there a mindset shift of like, hey, what if I just saw today as a gift? What if I saw this moment?
Because then isn't it that like that's the healing balm
Yeah.
on even the hard things, that like healing, right? And maybe not in the moment, but it does help. It helps to like cover up the burn or the pain. Not to cover it up to like leave it there, but cover it up for healing to happen.
Restoration.
Yeah.
And then isn't that when people around us are like, wow, what amazing things the Lord has
Then
done
they
for
start
them.
noticing. That's the testimony. That's the testifying to the joy of the Lord.
Yeah, which even shows up in Psalm 1, or in Isaiah 43. And that's the thing, is like, I'm doing a new thing, and this is what I'm going to create, and then someday they'll honor me. And the people, right, the whole world, they'll honor me, praise me, the whole world will see.
Whole world.
Yeah, not that, and that's the thing, like for the Israelites, what's the world looking at? They're looking at a hot freaking mess. So the story's not pretty. And yet over and over again, Exodus, Isaiah, we talked about many already in just a few things we've mentioned over and over again. The nations around them are like, look what amazing things the Lord has done for them.
Yeah.
Wow, they're set apart by the presence of God. Look at this God that goes with them. That is the story.
Yeah.
A story of,
and then we're invited into that through Jesus.
Yeah.
And I've come for once and for all.
Yeah. Invited in and pursued. That's the other thing, right? Because that's the like, we see this cycle throughout the biblical narrative of like closeness with God in exile and closeness in exile, right? But we're still we're walking out.
Yeah.
And so in that is like, there is an invitation. But there's also a like, God is right there. He's not very far.
No. Yeah.
It's like you just have to like
pursue.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Yeah. That's good. Well, so as we wrap this up, what's the Kairos? What's God saying to you, and how is He inviting you to respond?
All of that.
I know, right? Is there in all of what we just Kairos?
Yeah, I think this is just gonna the simple thing that's resonating right in this moment is this voice of God that's like, just come close, child. You don't have to make the joy, you don't have to fake the joy or force the joy. If you come close, you will find my joy, and that is where your strength will come.
Good. I think mine is the even from the beginning of this, when we were talking about Psalm 126 of the going out and sowing in tears and coming back singing songs of joy, that there's a sense that there will be tears of sorrow, and we will mourn, or we will lament things that are taking place, whether it's the brokenness in the world, brokenness in my own life, and where I'm seeing that take effect, and that there will be tears, but in those tears, trusting that those aren't wasted moments or wasted tears, but that God, those tears sowing those seeds that come back and singing songs of joy. But that's what God offers, and even welcomes us into. It's like, no, this isn't lost. This isn't lost forever. This isn't broken forever. I think of the son returning to the father. It's this feast will be ready. Like, there is a celebration, right? All of heaven rejoice when one repentant soul or one returns back to God. That there is a piece of that, of coming back and singing songs of joy and the harvest. Like, that's the new thing. Like, do you not perceive it? I sense that there's something that God is stirring and moving. And we've walked through some hard, even with Centralia, we've walked through some hard. And there's a sense that in this space of, okay, Lord, we desire to be in your presence, come to you, to hear from you, and to walk out faithfully. That if on the other end, maybe it's the harvest, maybe it's singing songs of joy, because there has been some hard, and God redeemed and restores and reconciles and renews the broken and restores hope. So that's I suppose a hopeful kairos, as we've read through 126 even today.
That's good.
That's good. All right, thanks for being with us, guys, and we hope that you're having these conversations beyond Sunday, and from what's being preached and the texts we're in, and what you're hearing from God. And maybe it sounds something like this, maybe it sounds something different, but ultimately it is unpacking and discovering more of what God has for us, and that's never a bad thing.